Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our post-cabinet press conference. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome our Honorable Minister of National Security, Stuart Young, who will address us now.
Thank you very much, Minister Cox. Good afternoon, members of the media, wider viewing and listening public of Trinidad and Tobago. This afternoon, I am addressing you wearing my hat as both the Minister of National Security as well as Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister. And I must admit that as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, today I address you with a certain level of personal heaviness, but out of absolute necessity. You see, what has taken place this week is nothing short of fundamentally disturbing and potentially very destructive of the very important maxim that I live by, and I am certain the Honorable Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Rowley, lives by, as well as other members of the cabinet, which I serve in and have served as a part of since September 2015. The maxim is a simple one, but an important, valuable one that I think is something we in Trinidad and Tobago, the vast majority of us, believe in, and certainly we must never stop striving for. And those are the words of our national anthem, where we say every creed and race finds an equal place in Trinidad and Tobago. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, this week we had the most disturbing development, but a very planned, orchestrated, premeditated move that took place on Monday night in Trinidad and Tobago, where none other than a former Prime Minister and leader of the opposition, who had to have known what she was asking, permitting, and authorizing a former officer of our intelligence services to get up on a political platform and do, was nothing short of trying to destroy the fabric of our society that holds us together in unity amongst each other without seeing race. And the issue that was introduced, unfortunately, and in the most disturbing of manners, by a former intelligence officer, and this is Mr. Carlton Denny, who at no point in time was ever the director of the SSA. The director of intelligence is a lower level manager, and the only person who has the authority to hire or fire in our Strategic Services Agency, our SSA, which is our premier intelligence operational body in Trinidad and Tobago, is solely the director of the SSA. What we had Mr. Denny do, with the full authorization of the leader of the opposition on a political platform, is introduce nothing short of a lie, dishonesty, complete disinformation that the Prime Minister, presumably as the chairman of the National Security Council and the former Minister of National Security, somewhere, somehow gave instructions to Mr. Denny, who had no authority whatsoever, to fire persons based on their racial ethnicity. You have already heard the Honorable Prime Minister stand right here earlier this week and completely and correctly deny that allegation. Minister Dillon, as the former Minister of National Security at the time, and myself as the current Minister of National Security, also addressed it earlier this week. Unfortunately, it did not put it to rest. Mr. Denny has continued, but also, unfortunately, we have had a number of editorials continue the conversation, and one very disturbing one today, where there's a suggestion as who do we, the citizens, believe between Mr. Denny, who has been proved to be a dishonest person, and the Prime Minister, who holds the highest office in the executive of the land. There's no better way to address this conversation that had to have been premeditated and orchestrated by the UNC opposition under the hand of the leader of the opposition and other senior members of the UNC to introduce racial tension into society and to address that frontally with the truth and the utilization of facts. Because you see, part of their continued strategy of the Cambridge Analytica playbook continued yesterday, where the UNC at one of their sites posted a number of names of individuals of Afro Trinbagonian descent, juxtaposed against a number of names of Indo Trinbagonians from the SSA organization. The first point I would like to make, and every civic-minded and right-thinking citizen must agree with this, because you see it happen across the world. Intelligence officers and their identities should never be revealed, because that immediately puts them and their families into the line of danger because of the type of work that they perform. Once again, we've seen, and this started way back as 2010, we've seen the UNC have no qualms whatsoever in speaking about persons who are intelligence, calling their names, and thereby endangering them and their families. The playbook that we saw played out from Monday night of this week was a suggestion that when the PNM administration came into office in 2015, at the highest levels, instructions were given to get rid of our Indo Trinbagonian brothers and sisters who worked at the SSA. So what I would like this afternoon to provide are the facts, and to show Trinidad and Tobago and all of those who I hope are listening and willing to listen to the truth, what it is. When we came in as an administration in 2015, and I sat on the National Security Council from the word go under this administration, and we looked at the whole structure of national security, one of the agencies, the SSA, it was thought to be overpopulated, like many other government departments in Trinidad and Tobago. And there was a need to do restructuring. There was a need to also do some strategizing as to the type of positions that should continue and new positions enter, etc. So, and as an administration, but not at the National Security level, Council level, or at the cabinet level, there was direction given to the agency that it needed to look at restructuring and how it could become a more proficient, a more efficient organization. And in 2015, a total of 79 persons were terminated or their contracts not renewed. I give the assurance to the population of Trinidad and Tobago now that those terminations were all based on the issues of merit or based on the issues of performance, and also based on what was needed in the organization at the time. At no point in time did this concept that the UNC are trying to push right now of race enter into the fray. And here are the facts. In 2015, out of the 79 persons terminated, 57, that is 72% of those terminated in 2015 were Afro Trinbagonian. 22 out of the 79 terminated were Indo Trinbagonians. And I must tell you that it pains me to have to stand here today as a citizen and provide statistics on the basis of race, but it is the only way to deal with this dangerous concept that has now been frontally introduced by the United National Congress. Juxtapose that, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, against what we found. In 2010, when the UNC came into office, they immediately dismantled a number of important institutions in the security apparatus of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll come to sort in a short while. With respect to the SSA, we have found evidence, have it in my possession, even though they try to hide and delete it, of a plan to terminate 127 officers of the Strategic Services Agency. And I am saddened to tell you that out of those that they did terminate immediately on entering into office, they terminated 27 workers. 25 out of the 27 were Afro Trinbagonians. 92% of those terminated by the UNC were Afro Trinbagonians. There was one Indo Trinbagonian terminated and 1 Chinese individual terminated. So in 2010, in what can only be described as a cleansing of the organization, and you all will know, members of the media, some of you who may have been around at the time, but when you go back and do your research, you will see the methodology that was utilized in getting rid of these officers. Storming of offices, embarrassment through use of police, etc. At no point in time in 2015, when a restructuring was done of the SSA, did any of that take place by this administration. And as I have demonstrated clearly by the use of facts that cannot be contradicted, it was not done on a racial basis skewed towards any race when we did the restructuring. Furthermore, what I'd like to point out, internationally, intelligence agencies such as MI5, MI6 in the United Kingdom, the FBI, CIA, and the NSA in the United States, you would have seen within recent times, over the last couple of years, the President of the United States, for example, removed directors of the CIA, directors at the highest level, in the FBI, directors as well as deputy directors. And recently, the head of the National Security Agency in the United States was removed as well. And it is noteworthy because it is an understanding, not only written in your contracts with your oaths of confidentiality and secrecy, but it's also an understanding amongst officers who operate at these levels and in these institutions. You say nothing. The removal of the director of the NSA recently, the removal of past directors of the CIA recently, not one of them has run to the media, or worse yet, onto a political platform. And I understand there was a press conference a short while ago where we are now seeing the truth being revealed that Mr. Denny has said he has political ambitions and he wants to enter the parliament. I say that is not the way to do it. But worse yet, we will not stand and allow the destruction of the institution of intelligence in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't even need to go as far as the United States. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have live examples. In 2010, when a cleansing of the SSA and SORT was done, the heads were terminated. You heard nothing from them. Their names are constantly called in Parliament. Unfortunately, Sir Clement, Brigadier Joseph was the head of SORT. Mr. Clement was the head of the SSA. At no point in time did those gentlemen, even though they were removed in the most embarrassing, planned embarrassment, and most demoralizing of circumstances, neither of them spoke to the media, or worse yet, ended up on a political platform. And all due credit to the director of the SSA that we met when we came into office in 2015, Mr. Bisnath Maraj. He too, at no point in time after the non-renewal of his contract, termination of his contract, can he be quoted anywhere in the public domain talking about what it is he did or what happened when he came into office. And citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, with the greatest of respect, this is how we expect officers at the highest level of our intelligence agencies to behave. Both abroad, it happens, and thankfully in Trinidad and Tobago, up until this point and this dark moment, where Mr. Denny had to have been persuaded by the opposition to mount a political platform and tell the most unadulterated lies and to finger the reputation of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and the former Minister of National Security in a complete lie and untruth in the spread of disinformation based on race. And I stand here today having provided the facts. And I have more facts, but I will not refer to them because you see, as the Minister of National Security, I am very, very clear, and as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, that we must protect our institutions. Regardless of who holds office in any institution, it is not about the individual. In my respectful opinion, citizens, it is always about the office and the duties and responsibilities of those who must hold position in office. And I stand happy and proud to be part of a National Security Council and the government that has not engaged in that type of behavior. And I can give that assurance. So today, I condemn in the highest language and terms what we've seen this week. And I am now putting it on record. We will not be drawn into this attempt to blanket and paint Trinidad and Tobago with an unnecessary brush of racial tension. I also stand here telling you that we will continue to protect our important institutions in Trinidad and Tobago, including the intelligence agencies, whose effectiveness and efficiency, by definition, depends on them and their faces remaining nameless and them going about their work in a safe manner. Earlier this week, I had said that we would ignore Mr. Denny as the Minister of National Security and what he has done. However, due to the continuation of the behavior, I have asked the legal officers to look at both his contract, which contain his contract at the time at the SSA, which contains confidentiality and secrecy provisions, but also a written oath of secrecy, and to have the legal analysis performed, working with the Office of the Attorney General to see if there was any breach of that and any legal action that can be taken. And again, I say that this is being done not because it is Mr. Denny. It has nothing to do with the individual, but it is the duty of the government and as the Minister of National Security for us to continue to protect organizations and our intelligence organization. Because if officers believe that they can serve and we are giving you exposure to classified secret information, and then you are upset or you have a disagreement with your employer and you can go out there now and expose state secrets, it cannot be tolerated. And we will take action against Mr. Denny if he has breached those provisions to protect the institution. I'd like to address one last point that I saw raised by the member for Urupuch East, asking of the Prime Minister, who is the chairman of the National Security Council, how he could get access to the HR files of an employee in the intelligence services or to intelligence reports. As I explained earlier this week, as the Minister of National Security, I get intelligence reports on a daily basis from a number of agencies, including the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Prime Minister is the chairman of the National Security Council and likewise has access. In fact, to draw an analogy to cabinet papers, in law and by convention, cabinet notes and minutes are secret documents. And the only person authorized in law and by convention that can authorize the release of a cabinet minute or note is the Prime Minister. And I draw that analogy to show the population the importance of the office of the Prime Minister. If a former intelligence officer sees it fit at the behest of a political party to go on a public political platform and attack the reputation of a Prime Minister, the Prime Minister must be entitled to ask, who is this person? Because I join with the Prime Minister again in confirming that at no point in time during our tenure as a National Security Council did we interact at all with Mr. Denny. Both the Prime Minister and myself, the first time we even became aware of his existence, what position he held, was when it came out in the newspapers on Tuesday morning. So if an officer is prepared to go at the behest of others, at the political promises maybe of running for a seat for the UNC, and to tell a lie on anyone, but worse yet, the Prime Minister of the country, Chairman of National Security Council, it is asinine to suggest that the Prime Minister cannot ask of the national security apparatus, who is this individual? I've never seen him before. I need to know where this is coming from because I don't even know him. So citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will not be engaging any further of this conversation and the destructive ways of the opposition to try and create racial strife through Mr. Denny in this country. As we very clearly set out, the figures here, there was no termination of anyone under the PNM administration in 2015 at the SSA on the basis of race whatsoever. Anyone so terminated or their contracts not renewed were on the basis of merit, on the basis of performance, or on the basis of other matters that fall in this strange blanket of national security, where you have different levels of necessity of trust and confidentiality that may apply to other normal employment positions. At this stage, I will take a few questions, one at a time.
Just to seek some clarity on the data that you gave to us, could you just say what year the 79 persons were dismissed?
I told you 2015.
2015, and also...
From 2015 to now. To present. So from 2015 to present, under the PNM administration, 79 persons were terminated from the SSA.
Just further clarity, could you tell us what the composition was before these terminations took place so we would get an idea?
I am not getting into, I have given you the figures of those who are terminated. I cannot even get into how many persons are in the organization. I'm certainly not getting into any racial composition of who exists in the organization.
And unless you give us that and this data,
you can do the data as you want, Ms. Tiwari. That is the position. As I said very clearly, part of the duty is to protect those who remain in the employ of the intelligence agencies. That is as far as I will go. Mr. Amar.
In the information you have provided, I am sure you're aware that on the 16th of April 2018, Madam Justice Margaret Y. Mohammed, an action brought between Denny against the Minister of National Security, quoted in the judgment that the claimant was a former employee of the Strategic Services Agency, was employed with the SSA for 19 years until his employment, his last post of Director Intelligence was terminated with immediate effect on the 14th of December. You have given that information he wasn't in charge of anything.
I said he was not the director of the SSA. So, Mr. Amar, let me make that point very clear, because if you are a seasoned person, especially in the media, are not getting the point. The highest level of the SSA is the director of the Strategic Services Agency. Under that, as you would be aware in an org chart, you might have president, vice presidents. Let's use that as an analogy. The director of intelligence is underneath that. So he is not the director of the SSA.
Okay, I accept that. So, two wrongs don't make a right, you agree? So the Prime Minister, I understand, held up the file saying top secret or secret. You think that was right?
The Prime Minister did not hold up the file. What the Prime Minister held up. In national security, for example, every single day, I get envelopes marked secret and the documents are marked secret. That's why I drew the analogy of the cabinet papers, that it is up to the Prime Minister or the chairman of the National Security Council as to what needs to be exposed for the public interest. So yes, I do think it was not only open to the Prime Minister, but necessary for the Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister who had no clue who Mr. Denny is. Mr. Denny then comes with a frontal attack on the Prime Minister, saying, you, sir, told me to terminate all Indians in the SSA. No truth to it whatsoever. To put in context who Mr. Denny is and what his character is, what his characteristics are, it must be open to the Prime Minister to say, look, since 2009, this is an individual who on his file, for something to reach to your file in writing, insubordination and other issues. So yes, and then the Prime Minister and National Security Council can say what can be released as a secret document.
And on a final question, a final issue on that. It is not fair to say that he didn't know, because the issue of a judgment was given on the 16th of April 2018 for the same guy named Denny.
And the Prime Minister is not in charge of litigation.
No, but it was brought under the Minister of National Security.
The Prime Minister is not the Minister of National
Security.
Security.
But in the National Security Council, that has to be an important issue brought
Absolutely
to the attention
not.
of National Security.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Amar. When we came in as an administration, there were a number of officers terminated under the UNC's term in office from the SSA who have active litigation against the state for their termination. None of that would come to the National Security Council to say Robert Amar, Stuart Young, Urvashi Tiwari, Anthony Wilson, or anyone. None of that. At National Security, you're dealing with policy matters on a high level. This decision that you've referred to was a decision where Mr. Denny sought under freedom of information, certain information. He started his action out of Anand Ramlogan's chambers as Anand Ramlogan as his attorney. He started that action to try and get certain information from national security. It is only a freedom of information decision. The judge struck out the SSA and said the right person to be the defendant is the Minister of National Security. The judge further went on, I believe, to say that documents or whatever he was seeking, some of it, all of it, could be disclosed to him. That would not come to National Security Council. And I can say categorically, it never came to National Security Council.
Minister,
Mr.
Young,
Wilson.
how could you say that the decision of the government to terminate 79 persons between 2015 and now ought not to be put in the context of how many employees the SSA had? It seems to me that...
That wasn't the question being asked, Mr. Wilson. The question being asked, allow me to finish. The question being asked of me was in the racial composition. So tell me how many Chinese, African, Indian, Syrians, whatever other race, tell me what is the composition, the rainbow composition of persons at the SSA, so I can now determine whether the 57 Afro Trinbagonians, where they line up compared to the 22 Indo Trinbagonians. I am saying categorically here, as Minister of National Security, as a member of the cabinet, as a person charged with the responsibility, as I've tried, and as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I am not carrying on any race conversation whilst in this position. Others may want to do that. Others may want to destroy Trinidad on the basis of race. I will not participate in that. And what I'm saying, if your question is, well, how much is the total employment? That's a different question to what I was asked before. And I don't have those figures as the total amount of how many people are employed by the SSA at this given point in time. And you must also be very cautious in working out or providing information as to who is employed and numbers who are employed, because people have a way of working backwards and working around to then find out other things.
So you know that 79 people were terminated over the period.
Over the last 4-year period.
People were part of the establishment in 2015 when the government changed?
I am not saying that that doesn't, obviously that exists. I don't have that information with me here, nor is that something that at this stage I think necessary to get into, or am I going to publish?
Minister, you know, you put in perspective some numerics when you started. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm a little worried because you did take the time off to say 79% was Afro Trinidadian, 21% was Indo Trinidadian.
I said 72% versus 28%.
Right. So I mean,
over a period of 4 years.
The issue is
the restructuring of the SSA.
Right. The issue is that that may not have necessarily been, you know, if you are saying you're not carrying on with the connotations of ethnicity in the system, maybe on your part in the future, maybe we should stay away from that.
Because I agree with you, Mr. Amar. Left up to me, at no point in time would I ever enter into a conversation in multi-ethnicity Trinidad and Tobago on the basis of race. I have come here today, unfortunately, in my humble opinion, to answer something that Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bissessa gave blessings to, and that was premeditated, to bring a former officer, intelligence officer, up onto a platform to make a claim that is a complete lie based on race. There's no way I would choose to come here today to deal with race, because once you begin those types of conversations, it is the destruction of the fabric of the society of Trinidad and Tobago.
What was the nature of the restructuring of the SSA in 2015?
When we came in as an administration, we looked at the SSA. First of all, as you all are aware, we came in circumstances where there was a need to look at expenditure of money, etc. And we gave the then director of SSA, under the purview of the then Minister of National Security, look at the organization. This is what we want the organization to do for Trinidad and Tobago. Come back to us with a new organizational chart, or org chart, and explain to us who needs to populate it to accomplish the task that we're asking them to do. unfortunately, we found coming in as an administration, not only at the SSA, but in a lot of different ministries, departments, divisions, there's an unnecessary, I'll put it as an unnecessary overpopulating of posts and positions. But as the Prime Minister said, we have not terminated a single public servant.
Mr. Denny has since clarified that the directive was not given by the Prime Minister.
Well, I'm glad he has.
And he instead says it was given by a Mr. Matthews. Not getting into all of that, but you did say that what Mr. Denny said was a lie, it was dishonesty.
But he's now admitted it is. He mightn't have admitted it in those terms, but if you say something definitively, the sky is purple, and everybody looks up and says, no, but the sky is blue. I have told a lie. The sky isn't purple, it's blue. And if I come back now, a few days later, after you've been confronted, and the persons have come forward and said, but look, here's proof that the sky is blue. It was never purple. And you say, okay, I admit the sky is blue and it isn't purple.
Well, he said that the directive wasn't given to him directly by the Prime
But
Minister.
Ms. Tiwari, and you yourself asked right here on Tuesday, reading the Express newspaper article, you yourself came with an interpretation. Everybody else, or a vast majority of us in the country, reading the first 2 paragraphs of the Express on Thursday, and I have now viewed the video of Mr. I'm sure you all have, I got it on social media, of what Mr. Denny said. There is no doubt he came out and said that he was instructed to fire all Indians. And that then he then told the Prime Minister and the then Minister National, and he called them Rowley and Dillon, which I've had a passing out. I've been interacting with the Defense Force, and the amount of officers that have come up to me saying, sir, a military officer never describes a Prime Minister and a Chief of Defense Staff as Rowley and Dillon. That in itself they see as an infraction. He is the one that came and said, I tell Rowley and Dillon, I'm not doing that. And I believe in every creed and race find an equal place. He said that. Nobody else made that up. He is the one that said it.
My question is, Minister, irrespective of where the directive may have come from, even if it just came from someone within the organization, was an investigation done to determine if any such directive was given?
Ms. Tiwari, the first I heard of that, and I have been a member of the National Security Council interacting with the security services since 2015. I've been the Minister of National Security in charge for over a year now. The first I heard of that is when Mr. Denny told that lie. You are now telling me he's retracted the lie and he's now pinning it on somebody else. So at what point in time would I order an investigation or ask when this is now happening? He's changing his story, he's changing the goalposts. But what I can tell you is, as the Minister of National Security, I don't think that's necessary, because if I look at what I've been provided with, which are the statistics, the facts, from 2015 to now, 4 years, only 22. And it may be 22 too much, because I'm sure we never want to necessarily terminate people, but 22 out of 79 people terminated over the last 4 years are Indo Trinbagonian compared to 57 Afro Trinbagonians. When I looked at the 2010, what happened when they came in, I saw the one Chinese. Am I to ask a question, how many Chinese were there? Did they fire the one Chinese? People, let us not go down the road of ridiculousness, and let us not go down the road of segregating our society on the basis of race.
By terminating 79 people in the last 4 years, has the government made the intelligence apparatus in this country less effective?
No. I can tell you, because I've been working closely with them over the last year. We have a very effective service. In fact, in speaking to the current director, he's coming to me shortly with a strategic plan, but also a new proposed chart. Things change. So what may have been relevant 5 years ago is no longer relevant. For example, with technology. I don't know if you all can remember the world before social media and remember the world before smartphones. But with the advent of social media and smartphones, it has changed. So someone who may have operated in the past may no longer be as relevant to now. And we may need younger. I am always pushing for younger people in the organizations, because they think outside of the box. They're more flexible in their thought patterns. I'll take 2 more questions.
In February.
Just 1 second, Mr. Amara. Let me give some other people an opportunity. Yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that you'll be looking at Mr. Denny's contract and his oath to see if there's any legal...
I've asked that that be done, yes.
So for the officers that remain, are there going to be any amendments to their contracts and oaths to ensure that something like this does not happen again?
The contracts as well as the oath of secrecy exist. So that exists for all of the officers who are currently employed or past employed. Whether it is sufficient, I don't know, because this has now come up as the issue. So we will review that as well. If there's a need to modify it, it will be modified. But let me tell you something. A contract in black and white does not prevent people from breaching the contract or breaking the contract. You would accept that. So you get into a contract, build this wall for me for $20. You give the person the $20. They build the wall, contract fulfilled. Halfway through, they say, I'm not building it anymore. That's a breach of contract. Just having the contract doesn't prevent them from not building the wall. And it's the same thing. Having an officer take an oath of secrecy or sign a contract for confidentiality and secrecy does not in of itself prevent them from breaking. It's the consequences that come thereafter, which is why we will take the action against Mr. Denny, if so advised.
Sideways, sedition is in the air.
I hope it's not in the air.
But, well, the basic question, okay, we have a Sedition Act from whatever year it was. Is there a need for almost like a test case to be taken before the law courts? If there's not enough existing cases of ratio decidendi and obiter dicta, is there a need to see what we do, what can, you know?
That's a very muffled question, Mr. Douglas, but let me tell you this. I remember seeing, and I think I've seen, because I was the recipient of a pre-action letter, I think Mr. Devon Maraj or person so associated may be going down that road already, seeking to challenge the Sedition Act, etc. That is something separate. The Sedition Act has been applied. Sedition has been something in existence from time immemorial. That is an act that existed before we had a written constitution, so it will be caught by the saving laws provision. The courts will deal with that. At this stage, in my view, it is on the books, it exists. If the police service, and I want to make this point very, very clear, it is the police service utilizing it. I'm seeing certain political opponents and others suggest it is the government behind recent sedition charges. Again, as the Minister of National Security, I can say here categorically, at no point in time were any instructions given, or did I interfere with any police investigation. I am told, as I was just told before coming in here, for example, that the Director of Public Prosecutions has given instructions or given the clearance for Mr. Duke to be charged with 1 count of sedition. That was one of the briefings I got before I came in here. Just let me try and just ask your question that you're reading from the phone or otherwise. No, just now, yeah.
To ask if, given that Mr. Denny has also backtracked a little bit, was there any consideration given to taking legal action with regards to his earlier comments, or with regards to stating that the firing of specific people from an ethnic group?
I can tell you all that the Honorable Prime Minister is going to seek legal advice with respect to what Mr. Denny has done. I will proffer some unsolicited advice because I'm still an attorney at law. I think what Mr. Denny did is defamatory. If you issue something and you say something that is defamatory, it is defamatory. It stands. So I will leave that to the Prime Minister and his lawyers to deal with. But we are going to look at national security, whether he's in breach of any of the terms of his contract, his oath of secrecy, etc. And we will take action if so advised.
A video published on social media by one journalist of Mr. Denny jumping a wall, supposedly of Mr. Denny jumping a wall. Are you concerned about the leaking of that particular footage? Is said to come from some secret cameras at the SSC.
I have seen the video. I don't know about any video being leaked by the journalist. I got it on a number of WhatsApps, etc., from various people. I can confirm that that is within one of the SSA buildings that exist from the inside. I don't know what the circumstances are. I've heard his suggestion, etc. No, I am not overly concerned because unfortunately we see a lot of things circulating. That is something I believe happened 4 or 5 years ago. So no, I am not going to order any investigation to find out how that happened, etc. Mr. Amar.
I have two quick ones. One, both of them I think important. The first time I've seen...
I assume every question you ask Mr. Amar you will think is important.
No, this one especially. I have seen for the first time, published in a newspaper, the matter of the anti-terrorism act applied to some names.
Understood.
Two different sets of people. The question is, I don't believe these are legal, these are Trinbagonians.
I don't know the specific ones that you're asking about, but you would have heard the Attorney General say many times, including in Parliament, we have taken action against hundreds of persons. Part of, for example, our UN Security Council directive that we've signed up to is every time the UN Security Council issues orders declaring persons terrorists or organizations terrorists, we must take action in our particular country. So these are certainly not the first two. I think it's hundreds we've done now.
But this one is about forfeiture.
Yeah, and that is part of it. So part of the action we take under the Anti-Terrorism Act is going to court saying we'll forfeit your property, we'll freeze your property if you've been declared a terrorist. So it's really to capture anybody if they have any assets in Trinidad.
The second one is of concern of something you said, opposition courting criminals.
Correct.
And you were asked about the 2014 TTPS report on state contracts being awarded. And at that time, on the 19th of February 2019, you indicated that you was not aware of the report. Have you been made aware of the report now?
Sorry, you asked three separate things. So this week, I said that I have, as the Minister of National Security, I know for a fact that there are members of the opposition, both currently in Parliament, as well as those who served in Parliament, who have been engaged in communications with those in the criminal elements and criminality. That's one, so I stand by that. You're then asking me, referring to something that I said when? Oh, no, I'm not doubting, but when?
19th of February.
Okay, so that's
2019.
6 months ago, and I
2014 TTPS report. And you said you was not aware of the report, which was
Which
compiled
report is
by
that?
the now Commissioner of Police, Gary Griffith, as the then National Security Minister.
Right, so at the time, I think Commissioner Griffith said when he was the Minister of National Security, he had looked at that whole issue of state contracts and criminal elements and that type of thing, and he was referring to work that he did in 2014. I don't have that 2014 report, but then subsequent to that, information was provided, further work was asked to be done, because it's very easy to say Robert Amar is engaged in criminal activity, etc. I say, okay, if you're telling me Robert Amar is engaged in criminal activity, please provide me with the evidence, because I can't just go on the basis of what someone writes on a piece of paper and that type of information.
So we will see some action
Absolutely.
taking place.
Absolutely.
And finally, on the domestic violence front, police stations are not equipped with a proper person. Many women go to police stations and end up in a problem that the officers there laugh at them, make joke at them. I mean, I have been to the St. Joseph police station. And
Men as well, eh?
Yeah,
Here,
well,
men.
99% is woman and 1%
Correct.
is man. So we have to deal with the majority. Sorry for the men. But these women continue to, as you have recognized and you must know in your tenure, quite a number have lost their lives. I see the Jamaicans have taken a positive action with regards to that in their country.
What is the positive action?
They have launched a whole campaign.
The Commissioner of Police would have said recently in his, I think, accounting for the first year in office, a number of initiatives that he's going to pilot. That is one of them. We have spoken about that. So at the police service level, the Commissioner of Police is going out there. He's seeking the experts to help train police officers to deal specifically with how to interact with persons who have been the victims of domestic violence. So he's doing that on the Trinidad and Tobago police side. I have had conversations with Minister Webster Roy on the government side, who that falls under. In fact, she invited me and I addressed male police officers at the police academy a few months ago on that specific topic. How do we deal with these issues of domestic violence? So we are doing work with the police, I'm happy to say, under Commissioner Griffith, are specifically going to deal with that issue. And I hope they get it done as quickly as possible.
Sedition thing. You know, you say that the laws exist and the police will use them. But are you feeling a call to revise the laws or to run a public education campaign?
Mr. Douglas, with the greatest of respect, I am not the government, and we don't do things on the whim and fancy of I have a feeling, because I have plenty feelings, and if I could implement a lot of those feelings, it would be different. So the answer is no. As I told you before, categorically, that is not currently before us. We're not addressing it. Last question.
You said Mr. Duke will be charged on one count of sedition.
That is the information I got before I came in, that the Director of Public Prosecutions has given the police the clearance to charge.
NATOC this morning had a press conference, and they said that the Sedition Act is colonial. It's used to instill fear, it's a disgraceful display and misuse of abuse of legislation that has no place in modern times. Do you have any comment?
As I said a short while ago, the decision to charge Mr. Duke or anybody else under the Sedition Act is solely within the prerogative of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I knew nothing about this until I was so informed. They have been the ones who have taken this decision, and as I just told Mr. Douglas, at this stage the government is not looking at the Sedition Act and any reform of it, repeal of it, or anything like that. It remains on the books like many other laws, and I am happy to see a police service that are enforcing the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you all very much.